So shall we hit it on the head, guys? Thanks for joining us today. So the topic of our discussion today is your business truly ready to reopen? With the current pandemic, COVID-19, business as usual has changed to some degree, and more so for some businesses than others. We've got two speakers that are going to be presenting today, Trevor Clark from Action Coach, and then Janice and Garth are joining us from 2.dash, just to share some insights around business, how we need to work going forward, and some policies and procedures that we need to put in place to make sure that we're compliant and that our business can run effectively. If there's any lockdowns going forward, how we can deal with those. Just to start off with, I'd like to just create a little bit of a backdrop as to the discussion today. And one of the biggest challenges that businesses face really comes down to people's habits. There's been a lot of talk around what's going to happen going forward. How's business really going to change? Human nature. Are they creatures of habit? Will they go back to the old? Or are they going to be behaving in a different manner? And I think if you look globally at what's happened, not just in our current environment, but also going back in history, if you go back to World War I, World War II, swine flu types of pandemics, and the likes, you'll see that the world has suffered adversity many, many times. And human nature has never, ever changed. World War I think it ran for 5-6 years, and people came out of it. People continued as normal. Coffee shops were open, restaurants were open, hotels continued to trade, life carried on. So we have got a firm belief that people are going to go back to life in a pretty usual state as to what they had previously. There might be some nuances, but generally human nature will not change. We are social people. We need to interact with public. We need to have social environments with friends and communities. People need to go back to their churches. People want some sort of stability back in their lives. So what we've been through in the last few months, it's called 3.5 months of proper lockdown, is people's habits changed. And this has been one of the biggest mindsets. A habit actually takes about 66 days to be formed. There was talk of 7 days and 21 days. But if you look at proper research, you'll find that for something to really be ingrained in your DNA, after 66 days, these things actually become habits. Now, we've endured over 90 days of lockdown. So a lot of our lockdown period, we've actually got some very bad habits that we have formed. So I'll give you an example in business. I'm wearing a smart shirt today, but you don't actually know what's going on below my waist. I could be sitting here in my underpants, pair of baggies, or a smart pair of longs. And one thing that we found in business is that when you dress casual, you act casual. So when people are working remote, a lot of people are acting very casual in their approach towards business, which might not be conducive for business. So just be mindful, if people are working remotely, just be mindful to set yourself in an environment where you can work, where it's conducive to work. In a remote environment. Have a separate office, no distractions with children or your husband or your wife or the telephone ringing or the gardener or the maid. Try and break these habits and be present at work whilst you're working. When you go back into the workspace, if you are able to go back to your offices and stuff, things are different. Things are going to be different. You've got to wipe surface areas. You've got to look at your the section that you're working in, make sure that it's free from any COVID-19 germs. But more importantly, you also need to reinsure your customer. So I'm just going to use an example. I'm going to talk around the food industry. I had a chat this morning with a guy who owns a very, very prominent brand. And they opened up for business yesterday. And he phoned me very concerned, saying that they're sitting at only 50% of their turnover on day one, which they cannot break even on at 50%. And I said to him, what have you done differently? Now, in his environment, he's got a restaurant area inside and then also an overflow area on the outside. And I said to him, one of the things I found was when I went to my first little restaurant outing on the weekend was I actually felt more comfortable sitting outside. So I went into the restaurant, ordered my food. It was a grab and go type thing. Grabbed my food and I actually went outside. I didn't want to feel like I was in this confined space because I've got this bad habit now that I've formed and this paranoia around these germs and stuff. So I went outside and I saw some tables and chairs outside area. I put my cup down on the table and we were chatting and I had my breakfast bun in my hand and I was drinking and eating. And before I knew it, I was actually sitting down. So I'd actually already started the transition to sitting at a restaurant. But one of the things that he didn't do yesterday was demonstrate hygiene. And this is probably why he didn't have so much success yesterday is you actually need to dress your business up for our new environment to create consumer confidence. Wipe the table down in front of the customer. Demonstrate it to him. Make it theater. So he feels like when he's sitting down, he is in a safe environment. The fact that the table was wiped down half an hour earlier doesn't give the client any peace of mind or the patron any peace of mind because he never saw the act actually taking place. So we need to be mindful of the psyche. What are our customers actually experiencing right now? Is fear. How can we overcome this fear and make them feel comfortable again and start to create and teach new habits for people so they can start to integrate back into society and get back into the flow of things while maintaining a safe environment for them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Trevor, who's going to talk in a hell of a lot more detail about this. So over to you, Trevor. I'm going to let you share your slide. I'm just going to quickly stop share screening and you can put yours back up.
Thanks, Gary. And just as a quick health check, is the screen showing okay? Are you seeing my screen and hearing me okay?
Thanks, Trev.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for setting this up. A nice opportunity to share some ideas, and just wanted to cover just touch on exactly what you said. It's pointless doing all the stuff and being compliant, but nobody actually knows you are compliant. So it's about getting it out there. So a couple of quick things I just wanted to take people through. It's basically a 9 or a 10-point to-do list of the things that some people might have already done, some things that people probably haven't yet done and know they should, and maybe some ideas that are totally new ideas or what we can do just to get ready to reopen. What we've been doing with a lot of our clients over the last 3 months, we've been calling it survive and thrive. You know, the main point is helping people just survive the first month or two of lockdown, and really well done to the guys that have done that so far. But now it's about we're through this now, let's thrive going forward. There's still half a year to go and lots of opportunity. But a lot of people using the word reopen, relaunch. I'd like to use the words restart as people start getting back to business. And those of you, I know Gary, you are, and I'm not sure who else on the call is, but motor racing fans, if you think of a Formula One race, if there's an accident or a change in the race and the safety car comes out, the race either stops or the race slows down. You'll know that when a race restarts, the restart in a race can actually be the most dangerous time because the positions have changed, the race order has changed, there's a whole new dynamic, the weather might even have changed. And you'll know that in a race, when a race restarts, that's actually when accidents are most likely to happen. So that actually, as we're relaunching our businesses, we're actually restarting an entire different race because our businesses have changed, the market has changed. We've got totally new competitors that we never had before. We've got totally different suppliers that we never had before, and most of us totally different customers as well. So it's about rethinking this entire business as we reopen. I'll wrap up with this slide that I've put up here, because much as in the South African context, there's all the new levels of lockdown. Even within those new levels, it's different for different industries. So different people it's not the same for every business. So what we did a little while ago was sort of looking at these phases, generic phases of business, lockdown, training, warming up, sprint, and then obviously the compete, and let's really drive it forward. And the idea behind this, I'll wrap up with this slide, and if anybody wants it as a handout, we can just send it out. But a nice one on what are the tangible things you can focus on at a personal level, as well as at a business level, depending on where your business is at each of these levels. Because I think what we're seeing is, yes, we're opening up again, but a lot of the indicators, especially those of you that are in KZN, it's quite likely that we might actually go back into a deeper lockdown in a week or a month or 2 months' time. We might go up a level or down a level. on the phases of lockdown. So it's being really able to play in the moment and understand where you're at, what are the tangible actions you can take at each level. The first thing is, you've covered it really nicely, prepare, and that's why I'm so chuffed to have Janice and Garth from 2.dash on the call here. This is their space, so there's compliance specialists that can really help you be 100% clear on what you can do to be 100% ready to reopen. So I won't spend time on that. And Gary, I think that you've touched on it really well, is yes, you can be compliant, but if your customers don't know that you're compliant, if your staff don't know you're compliant, they're going to be really scared. So get the message out there. Really shout about the steps that you've taken. So sort of to do number 2, rebuilding your team. So many people I find have adapted really well to virtual working. I'm seeing a lot of people that haven't yet got their heads around it. So here's a real important time. Much as business owners are adapting to change in different manner, how often are we making sure our staff and our teams are getting on top of it? Human beings, it's a scary time what's happening out there. So are we taking the time to drill down? Some people are getting 100% back to work and the offices have reopened. What I'm seeing is the majority of businesses are kind of some people at home, some people at the office, they're doing shifts. So it's a totally new reality of how we communicate, how we work with our teams. So if we have a bit of time later, we'll drill down on it. But what are those regular cycles of communication that we're having with our team? And then what is the technology? There's some lovely technology solutions out there in terms of how as a team we work together better in remote, this hybrid that we're in now of virtual workspace as well as physical workspace. So are you looking at that and reinventing the way you work as a team? Another key thing is as people are getting used to the new world outside of lockdown in different ways, how are you going to get your customers to start re-engaging with you? For those people that have been 100% shut down and are now opening up, a lot of customers are still going to be really scared because obviously a lot of people are really bunkered down. If people are high risk or they have people in their homes that are at high risk, they're not getting out. I was actually quite chuffed the day before yesterday. I'd grown the lovely COVID long hair and hadn't had the chance to get a haircut. I went to the barber 2 days ago. My Pakistani barber's around the corner and it was so awesome to see the guys. I said, so you must be busy now that you've reopened. And he said, we are still dead quiet. Much as they're opening and they're trading and they're able to cut hair, a lot of people are still too scared to get out to shopping malls and get out and have a haircut. So, and it's similar in every business. So what are the things that's going to get the people to your customers to re-engage with you? And obviously deals are so important. What is that deal that's going to, and it's going to be different deals for different people, but what's going to get them to take action and come and do business with you? Either virtually, because obviously there's no risk, but obviously if you do have a business or a product or a service that requires face-to-face interaction, what's going to get them to be brave enough to get out there and come and deal with you? And deals are a great way to entice that action. Again, if there's stuff happening, shout about it. Think of this as a relaunch. Get people excited about it. There's been so much fear and negativity lately out there. So, how can we, if there's new things happening in the business, new team members, new customers, as you might have reopening dates, are you getting out there and talking to your stakeholders about it? We're so lucky at the moment, but also every blessing comes as a curse as well. There's so many channels now to talk to our target market. So in theory, our customers should know more about us than ever. But the downside is there's so much noise out there. So we've got all these channels, from Facebook to LinkedIn to Twitter and Instagram and email and newsletter marketing and WhatsApp and SMS and the good old-fashioned telephone. So it's, in theory, it's so easy to talk to everybody. We've got all these channels, but at the same time, our audiences are drowning in messages from 1,000 other people. So if there's good things happening in your business, we now need to actually shout even louder to be heard in that market. So are you getting your message out there? And let your stakeholders, and that's why I use the word stakeholders, not just customers, that people know exactly what's happening in the business. And celebrate it, that really, and that's why I wanted to use the word here, celebrations. Think of the excitement that you had when you very first opened your business. And a lot of people maybe started from one person working from upstairs above mom's garage, or, that little launching a business from the dining room table, that very first little coffee shop, whatever it might be, that excitement of launching that first business. Leverage that. Think back on the days when you launched the business and start celebrating the stuff. We are open. We did survive. We made it this far. There's so many people I'm seeing at the moment that have totally reinvented their business for the better. My last call actually was a coaching session with one of my clients. They've had 2 record months, month on month, over the last 2 months in a time of crisis like this. And they're not supplying PPE. They're not in IT. They're not in some of the industries that are traditionally thriving right now. There's a lot of people that are, so if you, just surviving is a good thing to shout about, but if there's some amazing new things happening in the business, get that excitement out there. Because trust me, a lot of your competitors are not shouting about it. It's an opportunity to get good news out there. A key thing as well, if you haven't yet, rerun those numbers. Sit down with your accountant, your coach, your bookkeeper, your financial director, and just relook at the impact of the last couple of months. I've seen a lot of businesses that we thought would be really hurt badly, actually haven't been hurt as badly as expected. Others, the impact is a lot worse. But this whole change of working structures, at very least, if you haven't yet, that third point there is recalculate what is your break-even target. A lot of us know what our break-even target is. You know, what is that key number that we need to hit every month to cover our total costs? Often when people re-crunch that break-even target, it's often not what we think, even because we often do an emotional calculation on what we think our break-even numbers are. So yeah, if anybody got hold of any government money or loan money, use it wisely, because we're not out of this yet. There's going to be a lot of there's a lot of changes coming, and I'm excited to hear what Janice is going to talk about in that space. You know, what we can expect going forward and how we can handle that side of things. So if you have cash, still be careful with it. And yeah, marketing, lifeblood of every business. I don't think I need to talk around that. We know the theory is where marketing is always the first thing to cut, and it's obviously the last thing we should be cut, but it's about changing your marketing strategy, understanding that fear and worry is a real issue for people, and it's going to be for a long time. So make sure we are talking around that, making your products real, making it personal, video testimonials, that kind of stuff. Are we leveraging these things inside our business? If you haven't yet, and working on your database management is so critical. You know, looking at all your existing and past customers and keeping in regular contact with all of them. A strategy that I'm seeing work really well with people I've been coaching lately is if you haven't done the exercise, go into your database and a list of every unconverted prospect of somebody that you spoke to a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but they never bought from you. Get into your database and get in touch with those people and find out what's happening in their lives right now. Chances are there's some amazing business. The time wasn't right back then, but maybe you're just the right person at the right time now. So database management is critical right now. And, you know, gratitude is such a powerful force in nature and often neglected. You know, a lot of us are here today because of somebody else. So I know people that are only in business because of their suppliers giving them better terms, landlords giving them a bit of a rent reprieve, staff for going over and above the extra mile. If you've had help from the media and what have you, just get out there and just that good old fat. Too often people are so busy and so in the trenches, even though we are grateful, that we forget to take the time to say thank you. So there's people that have helped you through this crisis. And a good old-fashioned thank you note. I'm not sure if you've had one of those recently, but think of the value that's the touch around that. So don't forget the gratitude. And yeah, last but not least, you know, all goal setting is off. The old rules of the game. A lot of people had their 1 year, their 3-year goals, their 1 year goals, their quarterly goals, and come February, March this year, all those goals for a lot of businesses were kind of thrown out the window, and it's very tactical, stay alive, week by week, daily cash flow management, that kind of thing. So as we're starting to breathe again and coming up to, you know, this thing of the new normal, is if you haven't yet, now's a good time to start re-looking at those long-term goals and revisit that plan. So I work with people that the old plan is still in place, and that the last few months was just kind of a slight detour, and it's back on track and back to business as usual. Other people, it's a totally new strategic plan. So take the time now to see where we're going. And if you're stuck on that, obviously reach out. There's lots of people that can help you around that space. So I hope that little sort of checklist has been useful, just to kind of say there's 9 or 10 different things. Some might be things you're already on top of, and others maybe it's that kind of little spur. I should have thought of that. I haven't yet. We'll send this out, but I'll just leave it up for a second while I wrap up, because it's obviously nice to think, what are the things I can do for me? What are the things I can do for my team or my business at each of these levels? And, much as some of you are at sprint phase, I know other people that are still, you think of people in the conferencing game. Conferencing, who knows when that'll start opening up again. Travel, that's sort of, it's opening up to a level. So maybe training is a good thing to be focusing on right now, for instance. But as we go up and down, that's the way to go. So I hope this has been useful. Gary, I'll hand that back to you. But if anybody needs any help on this stuff, give me a shout. It'd be awesome to sit down over a virtual coffee and see where we can drill down deeper. Gaz, can I give you the control of that to make you the host again on that?
Yeah, do you want to stop share screen and I'll get the other one back up? Thank you, sir. Well done, Trev. That was great. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Let me just quickly get this on here. I'll be 2 secs. So I think what's happened amidst this COVID lockdown and stuff is that one of the other habits that people have fallen into is a habit of survival mode. And just to share with you what I mean by that, because some businesses have obviously shrunk and we're sitting with people who have got less income, there's been salaries that have been reduced, there's been retrenchments, people stuck on furlough and the likes. People have literally been focused on debt, worrying about their monthly overhead expenses. Now, as a business owner, entrepreneur, or self-employed individual, whatever it might be, it's exceptionally important for us to get our heads out of the trenches and start to look back up again and start to aspire, start to look for the golden nuggets and get this survival mode instinct gone completely. Because if you're no longer in lockdown, you now have the ability to reopen your business, reinvent yourself, reopen, relaunch, whatever you want to call it, but get back into the markets. But in order to get back in the markets, you've got to get your head back to your business. And we have seen so many people that have still got the survival instinct, just paying their bills and not seeing the opportunities that are out there. Some people are going to take this COVID-19 experience and grab it as an opportunity and make great success from it. And other people are going to die. It's up to each and every one of us to be able to decide which option we're going to choose and run like crazy, but understand the consequence of it. If you're choosing to roll up in a little ball and die, there's a consequence that's going to come with that. If you don't want that consequence, you've got to have to try and find opportunity. And if you don't know how to get opportunity, go and speak to the likes of a Quattro advisor or to an action coach or a mentor or someone that you've got in your life that can get you back on track again. But very important to get your head back in the game. And it leads to one thing and one thing only, is purpose. What is your purpose? What is the reason you're in that business? You've got to find your purpose back again. I'm going to quickly share a little video clip for you guys.
Have you ever wondered what ancient Chinese seafaring merchants and the stock market have in common? We thought you'd never ask. In the 3rd millennium BC, Chinese merchants laid the foundations for how most good investment companies approach the markets today. You see, most of the world's traders at that time would try and build ships that were the perfect balance between speed and strength. Speed made sure you got to sell your wares first, but strength made sure you got to sell them at all. Then they'd strap down their precious cargo and head out to face all of the dangers that the weather and the ocean could throw at them. They relied on their seafaring knowledge, navigational skills, ability to adapt, or even just pure luck to get them to their destination. Sadly, sometimes it just wasn't enough. If a ship sank, it would sink the merchants, financially too. The Chinese merchants had a different approach. Understanding that they faced the same oceans with the same risks that the rest of the world did, they minimized their risk by dividing their cargo amongst themselves. This way, if one of their ships sank, they never lost all of their cargo. they had minimized their risk by not putting all their cargo in one ship. This is the same for investments too. One of the most important considerations when constructing an investment portfolio is how much return investors could expect for the extent of risk they are willing to take. Let's say that an investor has identified 30 stocks with a similar expected return. Research has shown that although the return on the stocks may be similar, the volatility or risk of a 30-stock portfolio would be far lower than a portfolio of only one investment. In fact, in many cases, the 30-stock portfolio would be less volatile than even the least volatile share invested in. That's why diversifying across local and offshore asset classes, such as equities, bonds, property, and cash, is as important. So while many people believe that investing can be risky, it doesn't have to be. With this in mind, we construct well-diversified investment portfolios that aim to deliver optimal returns for the overall risk of the portfolio. And even though there might still be some volatility, diversification significantly reduces your risk of losing your well-earned savings, which makes for a much smoother investment journey. This means that although you won't find your thrills in the stock market, you can find them somewhere else once you've reached your investment goals. So be a Chinese seafaring merchant and stay invested in a well-diversified portfolio. Have you ever...
So guys, I think the message is for that seafaring merchant. One is obviously the aspirational side. Get your head back into the aspirational side and start building up savings and start building up your investments and start doing the things that you wanted to do in your life and your purpose in life, and make sure that you can realize those objectives. The other message in that is diversification, which I think is very, very crucial. And you could probably draw a parallel with diversification is to say, not only diversification in investments, but also to understand that you need to externalize your wealth from your business. So that if businesses do go through hardships and stuff, your total wealth isn't compromised. There are so many business people that put every cent of their money back into their businesses, reinvesting money in their businesses all the time. And if the business has hardship, they literally are in financial ruin. I'm now going to hand over to Janice, who's going to have a little chat with us now regarding COVID-19 protection policies and procedures and some of the insight that they have got and things that they do for their customers. So Janice, over to you. I'm going to quickly stop sharing the screen and then you can put yours up.
Thank you. After those very inspiring inputs, this is really down to the nuts and bolts of what we deal with on a daily basis with COVID-19 in the trenches. And we've got a variety of clients, from clients that are just surviving to others that are really thriving. And the really sad part of the COVID-19 for myself has been the clients that are thriving, often they're up to 250% of production in some of the food manufacturers. And all of a sudden they get closed down. So it's not just about reopening, it's also about staying open and staying open every day. Obviously, I am based in the Western Cape, so we see a lot more positive cases, but it's really, really heartbreaking to see businesses doing the deep cleaning, having a positive case, doing the decontamination and deep cleaning, and 2 days later, another positive case. So what we're really trying to do now, it's move. There's a trend that's moved to really curtailing the spread of the COVID-19 itself. And if you just look at the quotes above, never has it been truer that great businesses rise and fall on the speed of decision-making and the rigor with which policies and processes are understood and adhered to. And I think the despondency has come, especially in the Western Cape, where we're battling with the behavioral changes that are required of individuals. It really hasn't been easy for people to practice the social distancing. And in the Western Cape, I'm not too sure if you know the stats, but about 15% of individuals that need to be quarantined because they've come in direct contact with a positive case are actually complying, 15%. And that's why it has spread so fast. So to go through for the next couple of minutes, the recent lessons that we've learned, the moving target that COVID-19 has become, what happens when you get positive cases, and then what we can do about it from a procedural point of view, from a mitigating risks, and also how we support this becoming a way of life with our software. Okay. when we started, we were completely unprepared for the surge in the cases we would get. There was a complete lack of practical understanding of the impact on the companies. The COVID-19 management systems that we saw, we looked at the requirements. So we looked at the legal requirements. We need a risk assessment and we need related policies and procedures. We were quite good with the control measures, although there was a lack of supplies and PPE and sanitizer. We put the control measures ahead of the risk mitigation. So our risk assessments that we were doing, which really the foundation of our management system for COVID-19, were very flimsy. We're basically wallpapering over the cracks, doing what we felt was required by the Department of Health and the Department of Labour, and it wasn't really embraced as becoming a way of life. We didn't really realize how long it would continue for either. So the lessons that we've learned over the last couple of months is what successful companies are doing in handling COVID-19. They all have incredibly comprehensive, interactive COVID-19 risk assessments. So with online ranking and rating, and they're visiting these at least once a week and adjusting them. They have all their company protocols. They have customized staff training, not only for inside, but also outside the workplace. In some of the dairies in the KZN area, we are now training children that are going back to school. So children that are staying on, children that are staying on farms are now going off the farm, getting into taxis, and then obviously a real possible source of contamination. So the training is now including them. And really trying to drive COVID-19 compliance as a way of life, not only for this pandemic, but for future peaks and other pandemics that we might have coming our way. What we have put together and we found has really worked as a panel of experts that has been an invaluable resource for when we're actually finding our way in the dark. Often we haven't had support from the Department of Labour, particularly the ministers and also the Department of Health. So the invaluable resource has been a panel of experts that have got together, and if we have a particular problem on any one site, we brainstorming it with a multi-dimensional team. The changes in restrictions with lockdown levels have brought their own difficulties in reporting positive cases. That has been an admin nightmare in the Western Cape. I think it's going to be a little bit easier in KZN, and it is easier in Gauteng. We have now got over that hurdle, and we've got the necessary contacts and people that we need to report the cases to. But honestly, the companies were spending more time running around the admin and trying to report cases than actually dealing with the practicalities. And as Trevor and Gary were saying, focusing on going forward with the business. Tracking and tracing, which was a real blow for the Western Cape, when our tracking and tracing teams were disbanded because there was a loss of control and complete ineffectiveness. And then there was a real trend shift with companies having to fulfill this role, which obviously from an admin perspective is quite prohibitive, because now what you're having to do is go to the individual, who have you come in contact with, how can we trace these people, and how can we try and urge them to quarantine. Obviously, employers are more concerned with their staff and how they're looking after these employees, but then that has a ripple effect into the local communities. Once a person tests positive, there is also quite a mountain of paperwork with reporting the cases, containment, confining it to a specific area. And this is where the more thorough, the more time you spend on a risk assessment and the protocols, the better the containment will be. When we first started, we were at the stage where massive warehouses were closed down for 1 or 2 positive cases, and they were closed down for a couple of days. We've now got it to the stage where people have the workstations that they're going to. We're sanitizing that particular workstation, even with individuals with comorbidities that are critical to the business, that we're trying to wrap in cotton wool and keep them going through the crisis. But confining it to a specific area means that if you do have positive cases, you only need to deep clean or sanitize that particular area and you can reopen. What we've taken it to the next level now is the cleaning companies, of course, are making a fortune and they're completely inundated with cleaning and deep cleaning. So what has happened is now it's causing unnecessary delays and it's been completely cost prohibitive, even to our big clients. So what we're doing now is in-house cleaning and swabbing, sending it to labs as validation studies saying we're able to do this ourselves. So it's taking that back into the company. Obviously, you do need to have a cleaning team and be very careful about what sanitation methods and sanitizers we are using. Contact tracing, we're doing that ourselves. Quarantining, hospitalization, and clearance to return to work was all becoming quite admin intensive. We have a consulting side of the business that we were focusing on the COVID-19 in particular. But then what we've started to do quite early on is to adapt our software, our 2.dash software, to create modules for COVID-19. So everything is online and everything is tracked and traced and trended. So this is what we're looking at in some live examples. The top is obviously where we were and trying to manage it with all that paperwork, and that's real live examples. And the bottom is obviously what we take it to. And it is the software that we use. There are other options out there, but the software that we use, you're able to use on a PC, a tablet, or on a cell phone. And what we have linked in for the COVID-19 module is our HR and people management. So the personnel files, which has become critical in our fight with COVID-19, updated tracker for the COVID-19 with personal circumstances. So it's not just personnel details, it's who the people are living with, how many people in the house, how they're getting to work, the COVID-19 training itself, tracking individual employee performance and discipline is all done online. The document management is an interactive document library for all our policies and procedures, and it has online sign-offs. And this has become particularly important with multiple sites when you're trying to manage everybody. You know, a new restriction will come out or a new requirement, and you're trying to manage it across multiple sites and thousands of employees. The online sign-offs have really proven themselves. The COVID-19 RA, policy statements, the procedure, standard operating procedures, which all come into our fight against COVID-19, are reporting illness, hand washing, master cleaning schedules, and that's just to give you some of the examples. The inspect side of the section is real-time data collection through observations on site. And there's a reason I highlighted this, because the compliance and spot checks in the high concentration areas have been worth their weight in gold. Whether you do it manually or you do it online, those checks have been phenomenally positive. We've got to the stage now in the high concentration areas with the dairy, and it's moving from the dairy into a canteen area. People tended to start bunching. We've got the social distancing and we've got spot checks even in those areas now. So it's not just entry and exit canteens, ablutions, which you can imagine. It's in high concentration areas within the premises as well. What Inspect allows is real-time incident management, including your positive cases, and then Track is where we put, you can either do it manually or online, as I said, employee or visitor questionnaires, or your temperature checks, alerts for out-of-range results, which is really nice if you have it online. So if you have somebody with a temperature that is over 37.3, it actually sends out an alert. And then employee tracker with positive cases with to-do lists. Review is where we have automated trending and reporting, so you automatically get your reports. It's real time, it's got integrated dashboards, and it has multiple site integration. Okay, and this is just to show you what it actually looks like on a cell phone. So that's where you're logging in, and I'm just going to whiz through these slides. And that's what real-time action did the team member take, requires real-time action for every non-compliance, which creates workflow and track. This is really important for when things aren't being done. So you're starting to manage by exception, because there's a number of reports that you need to do hourly, daily, weekly, monthly in our fight against COVID-19. If we're not doing those on time, we're losing the compliance battle. It's so much easier to have these scheduled and pop up and you complete them automatically. Then a manager, say for example, I reported to Gary and I have to inspect a site and I don't do my inspection for the day. It will automatically escalate to Gary to say Janice hasn't done her inspection. And then maybe Gary reports to Trevor, and that's a second level of escalation. If Gary doesn't do anything about it, then it will go to Trevor and say, neither Janice nor Gary have done anything about this inspection. And you can imagine the power of that around the country when you're trying to keep your finger on the pulse and you're drowning in a sea of paperwork. So yeah, it really is proving itself. And then this is just to show you what we can do from a reporting perspective. This is a dashboard for one particular client. It shows you client inspections, cleanliness compliance, because that's obviously the basis of the compliance with the COVID-19, site inspections, area manager inspections, and then down the bottom is split between clients inspections and area manager inspections. But you can put whatever you like in your dashboard as long as it gives you the data that you require. Yeah, from a dashboard perspective. Really, the online system is something that is really taking off, and I hear what we say about the technology space and the IT environment, and it really lends itself to the COVID-19. But there really is also an option to just do things manually. So there are a lot of companies that won't be in this space, and it's not for everybody. But you can get very thorough, comprehensive manual systems as well, and you can refine them as you go along. But my advice or word would just be to keep it dynamic and flexible. It really needs to become a way of life. It really needs to become one of those things that you report on, that you have your early morning meetings. We're discussing it. Where are we? Can we refine our control measures? Especially when we start to get, and unfortunately it does seem that the whole country are going to get into the situation where we are in the Western Cape, where we get more and more positive cases. And I spend a large part of my day asking business owners not to panic. Please don't panic. We have this under control. We can get it clean. We can get the site up and running again. In fact, we've been doing a lot of the reporting just to take, because it becomes such an emotional issue, just to take the emotions out of it and to assist our clients. Okay, and obviously if anybody needs any advice, we're just a phone call away and we'll share all those details after the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice. Well done. That was very, very insightful. All right, let me just get my screen back on again, and then we'll head off. We got Janice and start. Just going to play a little video for you quickly, and then we'll get onto the presentation. So guys, there was just a little bit of an introduction to us as a group, the Quattro group. In essence, the Quattro Finance Group is an enabler for small to medium-sized business owners. Here, what we do is we try and get business owners to be able to be empowered to run their business and do the things that they enjoy in their business and things that they're good at. And we take all the stuff, the complexity of business, the challenges in business, like potentially the finances, accounting, all the legal and statutory stuff, all the stuff that bogs business owners down. We try and take that away from the business owner, and we facilitate in that space, and rather let the business owner continue to drive his business and grow his client base and look after his customers and have more fun in business. What we're going to be discussing now is just a little bit about some of the risk areas that people have been exposed to and have actually become more topical amidst this COVID-19 lockdown. And the first one is around sureties. Now, in the assurance space, we generally deal with sureties in the event of a death of a shareholder, where this person's borrowed money on behalf of the company to buy a building and they need a loan, or to buy new machinery. They need to finance it, and these business owners have to sign for the business's debt. Now, when you're presented with a surety document, generally speaking, most sureties will include what they call a personal surety. And really what that means is that that business owner or signatory is taking his own after-tax assets that he's acquired or saved up and signing those as security against this loan for this business. Now, that is where most business owners have the biggest hole in their financial plan, because when things get messy, these assets now get attached, and this is where you lose everything. Now, where it's played out very heavily in our space now is in particular with leases. A lot of business owners have signed a lease on behalf of their business, and the lease is a 5-year or 3-year lease, and let's call it 250 or 300,000 Rand a month, and you've signed personal surety. Your business now is locked down. The landlord calls for rental. You don't have revenue to pay. And all of a sudden, your surety now comes to calls to say either you make good or we're coming to take your home or your car. And suddenly the surety is becoming a reality for people. So guys, I just want to urge you, when looking at sureties, please consult with one of us so we can help you identify the risks that you are signing yourself to, and make sure that the risk mitigation procedures are put in place in order to curtail any of these risks. In the event of the death of a shareholder, they often waive what they call the excussion clause. And what this means is the shareholder dies, the bank that you've borrowed money from, because the excussion clause has been waived, means that they do not have to follow the normal route of debt redemption by going to the business to get the money. They now have the ability to go straight to your estate, where all your policies and your assets and stuff lie, and take the money from your estate to settle this business debt. There is no surety in place between your estate and your business partners or your business, so you are left exposed there. The only way that you can now get the money back from the business or the remaining shareholders is to pursue them civilly. But you've got no recourse against them at all. So guys, when you've got sureties, if I can just urge you, please, to contact us, let us read through them and explain to you the risks that you have got. Another big thing that has come to bear is emergency funds. Again, people generally try and live a lifestyle on what they earn. If you speak to most people, they earn 40 grand a month and they spend 42, okay? Credit cards are to the hilt. They've bought the most expensive car they can possibly get, the most expensive house they can possibly afford, the best school for their children, and there's very little to no disposable income left over. In times like this, when salaries are suddenly cut, all of a sudden, all these material things start to become a massive headache because you're living on tick. How do you emerge from this financial crisis still holding the shirt on your back? An emergency fund is exceptionally important. It's really just savings set aside for unforeseen circumstances. And they could be as simple as your car needs to be repaired and it doesn't have a maintenance plan or a warranty, or you've got a massive medical expense that you've got to incur that your medical aid doesn't cover, or it's out of hospital, your medical aid won't cover it, or like we've seen, job losses or salary cuts, or potentially emergency repairs to a home that aren't necessarily covered by an insurance policy because you haven't suffered a peril. In other words, there's no damage to the house. The damage was caused by wear and tear. So emergency funds are incredibly important for people and also for businesses. You've got a business. If you've got a business with expenses, you must have 3 months worth of savings, expenses saved, so that if something unforeseen happens, you've got an ability to be able to tap into these resources and survive the period. We've seen a lot of small to medium-sized businesses that have been able to survive to a degree, but generally funded by the shareholder or the owner, not necessarily because the business has the resources itself. Some do, fortuitously. But after 3 months of lockdown, those resources are now really looking sparse. How do these business owners now restart their business again? I've seen on the restaurant group chats, some people requesting 100,000 Rand starting capital just to go and buy new produce. They need stuff from their suppliers. The suppliers haven't been paid from previous months. So the suppliers are saying to the clients, listen, we'll send you produce, but there's no 30-day account. You must pay up front in cash. And these restaurants are going, we don't have the money to pay up front in cash. They just can't open. And these are little restaurants and stuff that are the local spot for that community. And we've seen communities raising money out of their own goodwill just to get these restaurants back on track again, purely because lack of emergency savings, emergency funds. So guys, I urge you to please, again, speak to an advisor and put an emergency fund in place for your business and for yourself. And you could do it just by starting to save monthly. Start now. It's never a bad time to start. The sooner you start, the better. Get your emergency fund up to a level that is sustainable for you going forward. Another big thing we've seen again is the increase in crime, particularly around people working remotely. You put all these firewalls and all the security in place for your business from an IT perspective, and then you send all of your staff home to go and work remotely, unsecured networks, the whole bang shoot. You've got people sitting at home idle on half pay, watching Facebook, seeing their friend who's just bought a new yacht because he sells PPE products. And he's thinking, jeepers, why aren't I doing that? Why is that not me on that yacht? Why am I earning less? And they start to think and figure out a way of trying to get more extra money because they are desperate. Crime is on the increase. Cybercrime, $6.7 trillion was predicted for cybercrime for 2021. The biggest risks that they highlighted. These risks were highlighted in November last year, and the other one, biggest risk, was a global pandemic. Hello? And that's already happened. So guys, please, if you've got a business with staff that are working in the office or remotely, it is an occupational requirement that you have a whistleblowing facility in your organization where staff are able to report about transgressions or challenges that they face in the environment for themselves and their peers. Maybe there's someone stealing. Maybe there's someone committing fraud. And these people just want the opportunity to be able to report and remain anonymous. There are many different vehicles you can use for it. Vara is one of them, a voiceless anonymous reporting app, which you just download on your phone, your company subscribes, and off you go. But very, very important to get your security up to speed. Another big challenge we've seen, people getting retrenched, pension fund contributions being reduced just to curtail costs, and people resigning or being retrenched and cashing in their pensions. Guys, this is sacred money. Pension money is there for when you are too old to work anymore. If you are utilizing, or you know people who are utilizing their pension money now for survival, it is the most dangerous thing that they can do to their financial plan. It is financial suicide. And I'm just going to illustrate it with this quick little slide. So if you just look at the left-hand side, it says contributions from 20 to 30. So this is a guy or woman who saves from age 20 to age 30 for 10 years, and they save 1,200 Rand a month. Okay, and that increases every year at 6%, the premium, and they pay for 10 years. They stop saving when they're 30. When they stop saving, they just leave that money in the fund. So it's 10 years of saving left in the fund from age 30, and then they wait until they retire at age 55. We've just used as an example. They would have 500,000 Rand in savings for 10 years worth of contribution. If we go to the right-hand side of the column, you'll see the contribution here is from 30 to 55. So this is someone who started late. They started at age 30, not at age 20, and they've saved for 2.5 times longer than the other guy. They saved for 25 years. They're also starting with the equivalent of 1,200 Rand a month 10 years later, which would be the same as 2,149 Rand per month. Okay, so you just taken the 1,200 Rand premium and we've taken it with an increase of inflation. What would it be at age 30? It would be the equivalent of 2,149 bucks. Same thing. They're going to increase this premium at 6% a year, but not for 10 years like the first one, for 25 years. And this is going to grow at 12% a year. They, at 55, are going to end up with 509,000. The point I'm making here is to say, if you start saving early, you can save for 2.5 times less if you just save early and leave it, as opposed to starting late. And this is the same as someone who gets to age 30, they've been saving, and now they cash in their pension. They take the money and they use it for whatever they need. They're now going to start as a 30-year-old from scratch again. They are going to be significantly behind the curve. They're going to be paying for 2.5 times longer, and they're going to end up with the same results as what they would have if they just left their pension alone. Cashing in your pension is the most expensive money you can use to finance a short-term need until you get your salary back up to speed or whatever else it might be. Added to that, when you cash in your pension, you've got to take tax off. SARS taxes you on that benefit. So not only do you lose all that compound interest that you would have accumulated over your life, you also lose the taxation on it. So guys, please, before you touch any pension money, consult with someone first so you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and explore other potential opportunities before you do that. All right, guys, we're going to open the floor up now to some questions for Trevor and for Janice. I'm going to start because I've got some questions here. So I'm going to start off just by these 2 questions for Trevor and 2 questions for Janice that I have that I'd like to get through. So the first one is for Trevor. Trevor, what is the most common challenge you see business owners facing around managing their teams, obviously working remotely? Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, and it's good. And you've touched on that a little bit. I love that, the anonymous reporting side, because there's a lot of that stuff where I think some people have really got on top of it very easily. Some businesses that have been working remotely for a long time already, but obviously a lot of that, very often it's some of the newer businesses, you know, the agencies, software developers, businesses like that are wired in that space already. I just heard the other day, I think it was Twitter, one of the global social media businesses. They've said to their staff, you stay home forever. We've become 100%. It's not about when do we bring you back into the office. It's just that is it. WordPress has been 100% virtual business since inception. Others are kind of getting into it in different fashions. And it's exactly like you spoke on, is that out of sight, out of mind. People are, there's enough distractions when you're in the workspace already. Put people at home. It's not just all the social media, that kind of stuff. Now Netflix is now the option because nobody's been watched. Homeschooling, I mean, hat off to everybody else that's got kids at home, and working from home where you're not the only person at home. There's parents and brothers and dogs barking and hardy-dars flying overhead when you're trying to listen and focus. So it's harder now than ever. So for me, there's a couple of quick things around that. Is the one is lovely technology solutions, and obviously some of the apps you've spoken about, and Janice showing just even how your compliance can be totally app based using technology like that. But nowadays, if you haven't looked at it yet, things like Microsoft Teams and Trello and a lot of these products, Google has their own versions of online collaboration tools with businesses. There's some amazing stuff out there where we can all be on the same page, working remotely. So the software solutions are brilliant. But to me, just a quick one is just also to forget, the crisis we're facing right now is just another crisis. Yes, it's quite a scary one, but you touched on it. There's been World War I, World War II, the Great Depressions, you name it. This is just the latest challenge that we're facing, and there's going to be new ones going forward. So too often we get too heated up in the challenge of the moment. Just going back to say, what are good disciplines in the first place? That business managing teams, yes, there's different technologies that can do it, but to look at things in your business to say, well, are we having a quarterly, let's call it strategy revision? At every 3 months, are we having some form of board meeting? If we have directors, we do that anyway. If we're a smaller business without directors, are we having a form of a quarterly board? Are we having a monthly review session at senior exco or manco level? If you're not doing it yet, are you having a weekly team meeting with your team every Monday morning? What's the goals, the progress for the week? What are we doing? Who's around? Who's not around? So that monthly meeting. What's working lately with a lot of people is having the daily huddle or the daily adrenaline meeting, as Vern Harnish calls it, where 15 minutes before we open our doors for business, your direct reports, you gather them around, and what used to be a standing meeting, we now do it as a quick virtual meeting. How are we tracking against KPIs? What is everybody's priorities for the day? What products are we promoting? What old stock are we trying? Just that little huddle before we open and that works at a retail level before you open your shutters and greet your customers, or even at a management level in a quick Zoom meeting. So that daily huddle is a good one. If you're a leader of a team, are you spending every day or so half an hour walking around the factory, walking around the offices, maybe just a quick check-in with the teams that they can see you present? And an important one that I've seen get great results with people is just a weekly one-to-one with your key staff. Not crisis meeting, just a check-in when there's no crisis. Maybe make it Wednesday mornings or Thursday afternoons, where it used to be a sit down with each person. How's it going? Where are you stuck? There was an issue last week. We don't want to deal, because too often we deal with issues in the heat of the moment when emotions are up high. And what they say, when emotions are high, logic is down. So are you taking time every week just to check in one-to-one, though, not in a team meeting where other people are listening? And how's it going? There's something I wanted to chat with you about, perhaps, or maybe I'm all okay. Are you okay? Is there anything on your mind? So a little weekly one-to-one with those key staff. So little disciplines like that, they're different for different people, but it's communication. We forget that communication is key, regardless of how.
Thanks, Trev. Janice, I want to ask you a question. What makes up your panel of the COVID-19 experts? Who sits there?
Okay, it's quite dynamic, so it changes depending on what the needs are. So if we need an epidemiologist or a virologist, they come in. But static in the group is the doctor who specializes, who's now specializing in COVID-19. A virologist, we've got food safety experts, we've got health and safety industry subject matter experts. And it's really just to have webinars, but it really has proved itself in brainstorming problems. And as you can imagine, with that kind of multi-skilled team, the results that we're getting out of that. But as I say, it is quite dynamic depending on the needs. So if we had a need in the insurance industry, we would get a subject matter expert to come and assist us.
Fantastic. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? Gary, Kev, Ellen, anyone there? No? Okay, I've got another question I want to ask, if you don't mind, Trev. What is the biggest opportunity you see that business owners can leverage coming out of lockdown? I mean, there's lots of different industries, I know, but just in general, what would you see as an opportunity?
I think marketing opportunities, like I spoke about earlier, is where people are so much more accessible nowadays. So during the prime of lockdown, you've got a captive audience because people are sitting down, and where most people when they're not busy, people are on the phone or on the laptop, whatever. So all these social media channels, so where you can digital marketing channels, so getting in front of so many more people, it's so much more possible nowadays. The downside, obviously, is, like I said, the amount of noise out there and cutting through the noise to reach those people. But I think the beauty I'm seeing it is geographies are being thrown out the window now. I've, I'm working with clients a lot further away than I used to. I'm seeing so many businesses that are doing work in territories, different countries that they were never doing business in. Especially people, even clients I've worked with over the years that have resisted, people that were quite far away from me, and we've always got together on a face-to-face basis. I've been saying, well, let's coach over, let's have sessions over Zoom, let's have virtual meetings. And even people that had really resisted that, they're like, no, I want to meet face-to-face and I want to have coffee. And now they've been forced into virtual meetings, and people are saying, wow, this is brilliant. Why do we ever have to meet face-to-face ever again? And I think so many people are now aware of this, which means much as nice to get back to business as usual, being able to, I love meeting people face-to-face, and I love coffee, as you know. But to be shame for those people that were very with a village mindset, and we now have this lovely opportunity to be international or bigger and meet so many more people, to lose that going back to dealing just in the village. It's so amazing how people can leverage and reach out across the spectrum. So we're a shame if that gets lost as we get access to all these new markets and clients we never dealt with before.
I think one of the dangers that we have seen with lockdown is that everybody jumps. Particularly, I've noticed it with South Africans. Whatever the people are talking around in the shopping center, pushing the trolley with the groceries, is what happens. So buying property in Malta was like a big thing. Everyone ran off and bought property in Malta, just like herd mentality. Whatever flavor of the day and sounds cool to talk around the bra on Saturday is what everybody wants to go and do. And one of the dangers is that not every business works on a remote working.
For sure.
Certain businesses you can have remote working, and in certain businesses you can have remote working for certain groups of people, certain staff, but not just in general. And I'll give you an example. We've had people that have been shoved working remotely just because they had to. They don't have line of sight. They got an LTE router because they haven't got fiber, and the signal is poor. I mean, like Ellen was saying earlier, I haven't got my video on, sorry, because I've got 0.2 meg or whatever you call the thing. So the bottom line is that we are ill-equipped as a country to deal with first world potential technology. Yet people are running off working remotely, but very badly. The other thing is that not all jobs can work remote. I mean, if I had my domestic staff, as a total exaggeration, they can't work remote, okay? It's not going to happen. They can't clean my home from their home, or vice versa. So you need to understand the business, the nature of business, and that person's job description, and also their environment. Is their environment conducive for working remotely? So like you've got a separate office, which is fantastic, but you might find, again, someone who works in a business is working from the living room where the TV's on, there's ironing, washing going on, those vacuuming the floor, the telephone's ringing, the doorbell's going, the kids trying to watch TV and be homeschooled. So we've got to be very mindful as to what type of environment we put people into when working remotely. I also really enjoyed one of the guys that we chat with, a little guys group together. He put a document together, which I really enjoyed. One of the things he spoke about working remotely is to say that once a week, these people working remotely have to come to the office just to keep the morale, keep the culture, just keep the vibe going. And there will also be potentially visits to the person's new place of business by senior management. So the fact that you work remotely, I'm going to come to your offices from time to time just to check you out. Make sure you're not sitting in your underpants and your long sleeve shirt. Janice, a question I wanted to ask you, how do we get our COVID-19 systems online for our businesses? So the guys want to go ahead. What do we do?
We specifically set it up so it's template driven. We have generic templates that we very easily customize to the different industries. And that's almost an overnight setup. So
Okay.
we specifically done it, specifically is template driven to make it as easy and simple as possible.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyone else have a question? I'd like to ask you another question quickly, Trev. How would you, if a business is working completely remotely, how would you envisage business owners keeping the culture going, particularly in an environment where culture is very important, like an accounting firm, let's call it, or a law firm, where there's inter-skills and relationships between parties and common thought processes that need to be applied. How do you keep those things alive?
Yeah, so that's just such an important one to try unlock, because culture at the best of times, every business has a culture, whether you like it or not. And some people love the culture in their own business. Some people go, when they actually see what the culture has become in the business, like, oh my gosh, how did I let that happen? Because culture has to be built. And it was always that, good grief, if we call it a silver bullet, it is one thing to get right in a business. I forget who it was, where they say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's that challenge, because especially if you take lockdown, is somebody was joking the other day, they were saying how the introverts of the world are loving lockdown. It's like, finally I can be left alone, I can just get work done, and nobody's talking nonsense at the coffee machine and talking, chatting at me, and a lot of the extroverts are going crazy, saying I need face-to-face content, and right there's already a challenge, because there's those two styles of personality have a different driver, ways of what's the culture ideal for them. So is why culture has to be driven top down.
Yeah. I must say, one thing that's nicer with this lockdown is that we have been accelerated into a new technology.
Yes.
I've had Zoom for ages, but I've never used it. It's like, I don't need it, so I just don't use it. So I see all this technology as an extra arrow in your quiver. Is to say, I can still do my face-to-face meetings with my clients, but I was really challenged trying to see a client in Cape Town, or a client in the UK, or in Australia, or in America. They're just too far away to get regular contact. And talking on a phone is a lot more disconnected than speaking. At least you can see a face on Zoom. So it's definitely opened up new channels for us to be able to communicate. And I suppose that also emanates with our staff. We're able to reach more people. It's funny enough as well, also in the sales environment, we've seen some guys who generally haven't performed very well because of a more introverted personality, actually doing a lot better behind a computer screen.
Exactly.
Which it's been phenomenal. So some people actually have adapted and got better with the new technology. So it's been
just an interest one you might enjoy on that, Gary, is I touched on some of the things like the regularity of team meetings and things like that. That obviously gets people connecting. What we see now, we even whereas in the team workshops and things is a lot of what I've always done in the past. And there we'd always get a venue, and I'd get the client and their team together and do a team builder strategy session, whatever it might be. Those kind of things we're doing online now, which is amazing, because then even sales training, we did one the other day where an entire sales team, everybody from their own house, we bring them in, and you actually get a greater level of concentration. But I think it's to look in your own businesses, everybody's got their little rituals in their business. It might be the action cricket team, or it might be Friday drinks, or whatever it might be. And actually just this morning, a client of mine, she closed off her financial year. And she usually does a road trip visiting all her different territories and meeting all of them and resetting the goals going forward, and a jolly, Temple bowling. And she was sharing with me this morning that obviously the team, and they're international in different countries even. And she's been chatting with each territory, and they each had to come up with their own idea of what will be their team build launching into the new target season. And the one team said, well, why don't we do a cookery evening? And literally everybody has to zoom in and meet in the kitchen in the evening and work through the same recipe where the foodies would brief everybody, and with all cooking at the same time in their own kitchens with the same ingredients, and sharing the results afterwards over the camera. Obviously you can't share the smell, but then seeing the same dish would come out the best. So a lot of people are coming up with unique ways, quiz nights online, and what are those things we can do with our team that even if we can't be together face to face, what can we do to have a bit of fun together? Because if we like each other, we generally support each other a lot better.
That's good.
But it's a challenge.
Very good.
Yeah.
Janice, I wanted to ask you a question. Just another. Sorry, Gary, you carry on there.
I was just going to say, talking about trying to keep and hold on to the culture if everybody's working remotely and at home and so on. I heard of a crowd that made a point of having lunch together via Zoom, as we're doing now. You can see everybody on the screen, and at 12 o'clock or 12:30, they would have lunch together. And then you interact, you socialize like you would do in the canteen normally, catch up on the latest Skinner and that sort of thing, and just stay in touch that way. Maybe you do a Friday afternoon, you do the same thing at 3 o'clock. Instead of going for a beer like you might have done after work, you sort of do it virtually online. But that way you're sort of keeping the vibe going amongst the people, so you're not totally disjointed and so on.
Absolutely. I must tell you, I was a lockdown birthday on the 10th of April, and the guys from the office surprised me with a Zoom call, and I was in the midst of doing all sorts of other stuff, and I got these urgent calls from the office to please, and I was like, I can't, I'm busy at the moment. Then I got another one, and then eventually one of my best friends, Alan, got hold of me, and he was like, Gary, you need to get onto the Zoom call. I need you urgently. So I was like, obviously there's drama, because if he's phoning, then there's definitely drama if he needs help. So I got on the Zoom call, and all the O's from the office were on Zoom having a birthday drink. So it was quite nice to have that. Yeah, it was great. Janice, I wanted to ask you, is there a time that's going to come, do you believe, in the near future where people are going to say, Sally's got COVID. Oh, shame. Sally, go home, and everyone just continues like normal, like the flu. The reason I'm asking the question is because you were speaking about industries or shops where the teller gets sick with COVID-19, they close, they disinfect, they clean, and there's this panic around cleaning the area and closing the business down, but not realizing that there's 150 people that are walking in and out that stores, customers, that are potentially non-symptomatic carrying COVID-19 anyway. It's almost contradictory from what we see. And I'll give you an example. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law are both COVID-19 positive right now. We were in contact with them, and as a result of being in contact with them, we had to go into 14 days of quarantine, ourselves, self-isolation for 14 days. I've been for my test, my wife's been for her test, we're both negative, but we still have to self-quarantine, and I understand the reasons why. But in my mind, I am as much of a risk as what you are, and you haven't been in close contact with someone with COVID-19 that you know of, but you may as well have been, or you could have been. So I just don't understand the logic in locking down the people who have been tested and been shown they're negative. And I know you do get false negatives, but it's a smaller percentage. But I'm 80% chance I'm negative because I've actually been for a test where you haven't had a test, but you come into my office. I think you're more of a risk than me. Why don't we just lock down the sick and leave the door open for everyone else to continue? Have you got a kind of an answer?
The view on that. That's actually really what we should have done right from the beginning. Really, seriously, especially now that we're not testing cases under 55-year-olds and people that don't have comorbidities. So you have a runny nose. Can you imagine the productivity from a business perspective? you have an employee that has a runny nose, maybe they've got a slight temperature, or they're feeling it's just normal common cold, not even flu, just a common cold. Off they go home, and they've got to stay, rules say that they've got to stay home for 14 days. So now you've got companies that are saying, I'll pay for the test. I'll get a private lab and I'll pay for the test. They pay for the test. The employee is negative, comes back to work, only to find that that was brewing, and now he's positive 2 days later. So we have had cases like that. And the real despondency has come in people not quarantining. So yes, you've come in contact with you've come in direct contact with people that are positive, and you've at least gone for a test. We've had, I mean, that's 85% of the people in Cape Town that should be quarantining, and they're saying, no, we're not. And they're just carrying on with their life as normal, whether it's at home or going to work every day or whatever the case is. So people are really starting, I mean, I hear it every day. I'm so over COVID-19. They're starting to treat it like flu. They really are. And I mean, you can see the rise in our cases. But yeah, I mean, it's business as usual. I mean, in Cape Town, we've still got non-compliance, complete non-compliance. It's almost as if we're controlling the people within the facilities. And as soon as they leave, it's, you know, they just go back to their normal behavior.
What I also noticed when I went for my test, that I fill out a form, and the form says, have I been in contact with anyone? So I started filling out, yes, Jackie Watkins, my wife, her phone number, all the bits and pieces. Then I got to add another one. Now I'm thinking, geez, like, okay, so I've been in contact with maybe 20 people, maybe 30. Am I going to sit here and type 30 names out? I don't know their numbers. I've got to go find their number in the phone book. So you know what I stuck down? Jackie Watkins. No. I didn't put down the other 19. And you know why I didn't put down the other 19? Because when I found out the test results from my mum-in-law, she had not put me down. On her thing, she had stuck her husband and her sister-in-law. But her brother-in-law wasn't, no one else. So it's like, well, what the hell? You know, is everybody else doing this as well? I mean, the fact that I haven't put anyone's names down, I'm still self-quarantining. But the point is people are not putting other people's names they've been in contact with down. Those people are going out. Half of them don't know that that person tested positive.
No,
you know,
absolutely.
We phone really, everybody going, hi, I'm positive. You know,
no. The onus is on you to tell the people that you've been in contact with if you do test positive. Because in the beginning, when we first started, we had doctors. I mean, one of the doctors that sits on our panel was in the tracking and tracing team as a doctor. And they were doing exactly that. So they would take those contact lists and they would phone everybody and say, you need to be quarantined. And that's all fallen by the wayside. So nobody's being quarantined anymore. So they're just treating it like the common cold or the common flu. And actually here in Cape Town, I have to admit that people are, and I myself have been, through a friend of mine, have been bought an oxygen tank. It was a bit of a joke because there's no available beds in the hospitals and nobody wants to be put on a ventilator. So you'll stay at home and self-medicate, and people are already getting the medication for COVID-19 and oxygen and whatever else they need, and they're going to fight it out at home. So,
at home.
That's it. You'll probably be better off. I mean, if you don't have COVID-19 or go into hospital, I mean, there are other things that can kill you too.
Absolutely.
You know, like drug-resistant TB or whatever, especially if your immune system is down. So most people in our circles are just going to stay at home, including doctors. They say they won't be admitted. They're going to have the fight at home.
Yeah. Well, both my in-laws at home. Sorry,
why would Gary, after being tested negative, need to still be at home for 2 weeks?
It depends on how many days since he came in contact with the person. So it is probably 12 days, and then they give another 2 days. So after you've been in direct contact with somebody, he could still get the symptoms 12 days later.
Even 12 days later.
Funny enough, the only reason I went for the test was because I was symptomatic. So I have had, and I still have, I have got a tight chest, and I have got a postnasal drip, and I have been coughing a lot. So I was symptomatic. I went for the test. Apparently, you can't do the test unless you are symptomatic. Otherwise, you get a false negative. So my wife, Jackie, only went for her test on Friday because she only got symptomatic later. she's negative. My daughter was symptomatic over this weekend, and she went today for her test, and we'll get her results in 2 days' time. But we're doing it, we can only do the test. So my son hasn't had his test done because he's non-symptomatic. But so far, 2 of us, or 3 of us have done it. 2 of us have got our results. Both are negative. But we self-quarantining, but we are actually symptomatic. We are sick, but we don't have COVID-19.
We are sick. But there are people that don't have any symptoms. Like if you're going for elective surgery and it's necessary. So it's not just cosmetic, it's necessary surgery. You have a test without any symptoms because the hospitals are saying you have to have a negative result before they'll admit you to hospital. And I mean, there's horrendous cases coming through now of people that need bypasses that have to wait for their test results before they're admitted.
Yeah, no, it's frightening. That's the biggest strain on the insurance industry at the moment, is the lack of beds available for people that are not COVID-19 statistics, but that need alternative care like surgery, car accidents, strokes, heart attacks, whatever it might be. It's a massive problem.
Absolutely.
One of the ladies I spoke to over the weekend, she owns a place down the North Coast. It's a little hotel resort, and her mum went in. She's in Cape Town, funny enough, as well. She went in for an operation. I think it was like a knee or a hip or something operation. 81 years of age. Went in perfectly fine and came out. She's got COVID-19. She's been sick for about 3 weeks. So she actually contracted it whilst in hospital.
No, that's the biggest fear here. So even, and that's also a fear with people that have comorbidities like your cancers and your hypertension and your diabetes and your TB, that those people are not going to have their normal checkups for fear of contracting COVID-19, especially TB. The TB programs kind of fallen by the wayside, probably going to end up killing more people than COVID-19, the TB HIV combination.
Yeah. We got some stats the other day in the Western Cape. I don't know what they are now, but it was 50% of the people who were hospitalized and died. 52%, or 52 out of 100, so 52% of them had diabetes, and 12% that were hospitalized that died suffered from hypertension. So it just shows you how the comorbidities for hypertension and diabetes were actually the biggest contributors.
The leaders, they are.
Leaders, not which a lot of people thought that HIV and TB might have been more of a risk, but in actual fact, not. So,
It's the diabetes combination with obesity, and that's become a real sensitive area because you can't really send people home and say, you've got a comorbidity, so we want you to go on extra training or we want you to work from home just because you're overweight. It definitely is a comorbidity.
Yeah. No, good. Any other questions, guys? Shall we wrap up?
No, that was very informative.
Perfect. Thank you. Trev, thank you. Garth, thank you. Gary, thank you. And Janice, thank you for your involvement. Roxanne, Stacey, and the likes. Yeah, it was very informative. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Great, guys. Thanks very much.
We'll catch up soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Be safe.
Ciao.
Bye.